Um, all right, there we go. Okay, so aloha mai kako, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our awesome training for disaster mental health and family disaster mental health with Amanda Hess. My name is Dr. Miku. I'm the director of SERENE, that stands for Community Engagement for Resilient Neighborhoods, and we're based out of Kapiolani Community College. I'm also the co-coordinator for the Oʻahu Resilience Hub Learning Community, and we are I'm going to actually screen share a few slides. Hopefully I have. Nope, there's an email. Gonna edit that one out. We are
It's not showing up,
oh,
at least on mine.
how about now? So sometimes there's a lag.
Now it is. There you go.
Oh, well, that worked out perfectly. So there it is. So here we are. We are the Oʻahu Resilience Hub Learning Community. We're a community practice dedicated to supporting development of resilience hubs on Oʻahu, connecting the ecosystem of resilience surrounding them. We're actually a joint program run through Lahui Foundation, which is a nonprofit, and then SERENE out of Kapiolani Community College. And it's building off of the work with the City and County of Honolulu Office of Resilience. Though our work is community-led, and just help support this effort moving forward. Our mission is to support individual hubs, micro networks of resilience hubs and regions, in coordinated learning and sharing of best practices for community resilience. This is, if you're new to our group, this is what we look like now. So we're actually signing up resilience hubs and resilience hub groups right now. We have a general membership that you're able to join to get these kind of invitations in the future. And we are actually recruiting for our leadership team to represent the different planning regions across Oʻahu. They really help shape our decisions, but then we, of course, bring it back to the whole community to vote on initiatives and programs moving forward. So that's us. I just put that out there in case you know people in EVA or the primary urban center who would be good candidates. So if you do know good people for that, please let me know. This is our nomination form. I'm going to put some of these things into the chat for you guys to click and follow up on. If you want to sign up your hub or who you people, or you're interested in learning more about resilience hubs, that's actually what this group is all about. We are accepting new members right now, and we have a whole bunch of awesome trainings coming up. So this one's really the first one with Amanda kicking us off for the new year. Winter, spring, sort of fuzzy. We have it planned out, but we've got our disaster mental health right now. We'll have psychological first aid after that. Then we will actually have an in-person first aid, probably looking at March for that, as well as an in-person AED CPR certification. So lots of good things to come. And that brings us to today. So again, I'm really, really pleased to have Amanda here to present this Family and Disaster Mental Health Workshop. So it'll be about 1 hour, and I think you guys are going to find it incredibly valuable. You'll walk away with some very specific skills you can use in your own life, but also whatever disruption or emergency might arise in your community that you're supporting. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Amanda to take it away and share her awesome presentation with us.
Well, hey, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Miku and the SERENE team for inviting me back. That's always a good sign. I'm going to try to make sure that I have everything I need so that I can see chats and whatnot. Give me just a second. Feel free to ask as we go. Some of it though, to make my screen big, it can sometimes take up space. So I'll try to make everything small here. And we'll get right to it. My name is Amanda Hess, and I'm a private practice therapist. My specialty is couples work. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Hawaii. And I'm hopefully going to have a practice again in Waipahu. You can look up all my information here, take a little picture of this. I have been very passionate about disaster mental health, especially on Oahu, for quite some time. I'm pretty active with Oahu Search and Rescue, and I'm pretty active with Oahu Medical Reserve Corps, as well as some other things that are happening here. And so I do want to make a distinction. So psychological first aid is really looking at like in the moment kinds of things when you're dealing with a crisis. Disaster mental health, the way I have it kind of framed, is more about before, during, and after. Really making sure that we're looking at mental health as a resource and something that we're mindful of, not just in a crisis. The term resilience, it gets thrown around a lot. I think it's in and out of fashion. I like the term resilience, but there's a lot of things that, can get in the way of us being our most resilient selves. Yeah. So one of the things that I've really noticed, especially when I was doing work with the Red Cross, I've done shelter work, and things like that. It's very like individual promoted. What can you do to be prepared? It's logistically promoted. And so I really wanted to make sure we had a place to zoom in to what we can do, especially for our families. Um, it is really hard to be dealing with a disaster and then also having to take care of your 4-year-old who doesn't understand and doesn't care what's going on with you, right? Like, so that's hopefully this is a small slice of something that I can make bigger one day. All right. So, mental health basics. This might be a bit of review for you. We have to look at disasters. They bring about like these responses, and there's nothing wrong with us when we're experiencing fear, grief, irritability, and uncertainty in response to a disaster or a hazard. Yeah. They're really trying to change the language about how we talk about disasters. But for disaster mental health, I haven't found a better phrase for it yet. So whether that's like a natural disaster or climate related disaster or a human caused disaster, these are pretty predictable emotions that come up. I like practical stuff, right? So one of the things that I want you to walk away with are things that you could be doing today and not having to wait, right? So stay connected, check on neighbors and loved ones, keep traditions when possible, have a plan, and seek professional help if overwhelmed. Let's start with this first bullet point, stay connected. Especially on Oahu and other islands, it's going to take some time for help to come if there's a major disaster. And so one of the things that we can work on now is cultivating the relationships of those around us, because there is a lot of good things that can happen when we come together as a community. Um, and we also want to make sure we're controlling the factors that are making us available to others. So what I mean by that is like sometimes in between sessions, I have less than 10 minutes to kind of shake it off before I jump into another session. Yeah. And so just the other day, I was like, oh, I need to squeeze in a quick 2-minute walk. And I forgot to grab my headphones and I forgot to grab my phone because I like to play Pokemon Go. What happened though was I walked down the street, maybe 2 houses down, and my neighbor was out there who I don't really know. And she was out there with the world's cutest dog. And because I didn't have my headphones on, because I wasn't absorbed into my Pokemon Go phone shenanigans, I got to see this dog. We got to have a nice chat. And now we've been chatting here and there. And so, looking at that notion, are there barriers that we ourselves are putting up that prevent us from connecting with our neighbors and our loved ones? Um, think about those kinds of things. Keeping traditions when possible. Hawaii has a lot of great traditions. When we're looking at families and couples work, we want to look at traditions or rituals, is another word that we call them, as things that we put into place so that we can reliably encounter some positive interactions between us. Yeah. So one of the things that's really big in couples therapy is something called the stress reducing conversation. And the stress reducing conversation is where we found the sorry, I just saw disruption mental health. The stress reducing conversation is where couples will take roughly 20 minutes a day and usually after work, and they just kind of check in and hang out with each other. What they're not doing is talking about problems in the relationship. They're talking about stress from work or stress outside of the relationship. And it's just a great opportunity for them to really practice listening to one another, not actively solving problems, right? They just want an ear or comfort, right? When they're decompressing after a day at work. And that seems to be one of the interventions that helps a couple stay connected, especially during a busy work week. So that's an example of a tradition or a ritual that we might make sure that we have, in a disaster scenario, I'm probably having a formal check-in with my family at least once a day, possibly twice, at the beginning and at the end. It doesn't have to be 4 hours, although sometimes it might need to be. But think about the things that you're already bringing into your family, and what are the things that you want to make sure, and put this as part of the next bullet. Have a plan, especially when we look at the Maui wildfires. And part of the grief associated there was loss of place, right? You've got people who are from this area for generations, and then the landscape is totally altered. And so if their plan is to, go to this one place in Lahaina, and that place is no longer there, that might bring up its own raw reactions. That can bring up its own set of grief in addition to all the other things happening. But we might want to make a plan that are going to include some of our family traditions that help, again, put opportunities for reliably positive interventions in place so that we can count on them. We have stuff to look forward to, even when things look pretty gloomy. Yeah. Have a plan. We know that the Department of Emergency Management has a really great Ohana emergency plan that they put out there. And I'll get those resources to you if you have. We'll also make sure to make my slides available, because honestly, I love disaster mental health and I can talk about it for hours. So I don't know if I'm going to get to everything, but we'll make the slides available. But yeah, so my kids now are off doing their college thing, and my Ohana plan now even includes like where they are off at college. So even now, I still pester them about those things just in case. And one of the things I really like about that Ohana plan is that it's talking about having a contact in state in emergencies as well as out of state, because sometimes it can be easier during an emergency to contact someone out of state rather than in state when the lines are all going hectic. Yeah. Seek professional help if overwhelmed. You might already have some supports in place. Maybe it's pastoral care, like, clergy, or maybe it's a therapist, or maybe it's just some really wise kupuna that can help guide through uncertain times. But having those things lined up before anything happens can help. And I'll have some resources at the end too to follow up on. Hang on, let's go. Okay, so stress here, what we're looking at, it actually, I believe, comes from physics, this notion of tension placed on an object. And for us looking at disaster mental health and the stress response, that tension is stress placed upon the body. There is a normal amount of stress that the body can handle usually. But disasters impact so many facets of our daily living and relationships that can exceed our capacity to cope, right? And again, this is not a pathological response. If you're having a hard time and you during a disaster, well, of course, it's so complex. It compounds stress from like every aspect, right? So usually what we're looking at from like a Red Cross standpoint is it like the immediate aftermath of a disaster, for example, is not therapy, right? A lot of clinicians might want to do trauma therapy, but it's shown to be a little too soon for that. That's why we have things like psychological first aid. And a big piece of psychological first aid is getting people information. Where's my family? Like, where's my house? I don't have a place to stay. I don't have food. Whatever those things are is really when we're real close to the disaster, it's really going to be this notion of just like let's focus on the basics, right? But some signs of stress, and some of this can be so vague, right? But headaches, fatigue, muscle tension, if we're not careful, it could just mean that we are dehydrated. So any of these symptoms in like just looking at any of them individually might not be very clear for us, but together they can show a big picture. A lot of this stuff is going to be pretty understandable given the context. One of the things that I think is a little bit different for mental health, that's not always easy for people to see, is that anxiety is not always looking like nervousness or indecision. A lot of times, anxiety is quite rude and it can look like people just trying to control everything. And really that can be quite jarring to feel that kind of energy coming at you. Um, it can be a maladaptive way of trying to bring some sense of certainty and predictability to our environment. But just know that sometimes that irritability piece is anxiety and it's not just someone trying to be a jerk. Yeah. Behavioral, we always look at how's the eating, how's the sleeping. Um, that's a piece that for small children you might see accidents even if they're like 10 years old, they might wet the bed and things like that. Those are some of the signs too that you might see in small children. um for the most part, we look at fight or flight when we're looking at our stress response. That's really helpful for the physiological on or off switch. But people have a variety of manifestations that we look at today. So a fight response is confronting the stress directly. Okay, let's get our plan together. Let's make sure that we're coordinating. Maybe we're being a little too aggressive about toilet paper on the shelves. Flight, maybe we're just trying to avoid the situation. Sometimes that flight can really trigger a family, especially if you're a parent and you're trying to get away, and for whatever reason, like your kids can't keep up, right? A freeze response, a lot of people get blindsided. Well, why didn't you do something? And they just were frozen, and that can later bring about some guilt, or feelings of feeling stupid, like why didn't I do something? But the body was like, you're not moving. Fawn, sometimes you'll see some of the things. Well, there were some reports of some not great things happening in Lahaina, right? Where people will do whatever it takes just to get access to food and things, and that there were reports of that being, you know, exploited, right? And so, or you'll see it on a lesser degree level. Fawn is, you might see children just be very submissive and not try to rock the boat because they're perhaps worried about their partner, or not their partner, their parent, who's having a hard time, obviously, with all those things. But we also have the notion of an evolutionary kind of maneuver of friendship, seeking connection to feel safe. That is something that has served humans for a long time, usually quite well. And that's part of what we can do, especially when we have a smaller community that's impacted by a devastating circumstance. So you'll see all kinds of reactions. Okay. Stress breaks and de-stress techniques. So I want to talk about some quick methods to lower stress. Again, these are things that are meant to just try to help you in the moment in regards to concentrating and grounding into the present moment, especially when you see things like anxiety pick up and run amok. And we're now thinking about the next 21 steps that we need to take in order to do X, Y, and Z. A big part of that are ways that we can down regulate so that we can have, from a calm place, make the next step. Because when we start looking at kind of the brain development that happens, and once stress hormones enter the bloodstream, so like adrenaline, cortisol, those kinds of things, for our purposes, we'll talk about the brain kind of having a lower basement, our lizard brain, and then the higher attic area being our wizard brain. And so the lizard brain is great at detecting threats very quickly, moving and collaborating, uh, things of like an imminent safety issue, coordination, things like that. It is very low res, but it's a fast response. Okay, those are things that are often like our lizard brain is scanning the environment outside of our awareness. All right, like constantly. Sometimes it's going to be like, oh, that's just a cat, right? And sometimes it's going to be like, that's a falling building on me. I got to move quick, right? So sometimes you'll see things happening. Your body is kind of making decisions for you very, very quickly. The wizard brain is very high res, but very slow to upload. So it's going to take some time, and our bodies can't do it all at once. Usually, once the stress response kicks in, and those stress hormones enter our bloodstream, what you're going to find is that lizard brain is going to hop online for at least a half an hour. And that is if you find a place to sit and be still and safe. It's going to take about a half an hour for those stress hormones to kind of wash out of our bloodstream. So if you're in a situation that is chronically dangerous, it's going to be vital for you to intentionally, for yourself and your family, whoever you might be caring for, to implement stress breaks and techniques. And that might be part of our rituals or traditions, making sure that we take some time to ground ourselves, remember that we love each other, remember that, we're going to try our best to figure it out, that we can't stop bad things from happening always. But we want to give our bodies and brains a break. Yeah. Because if it's chronic, those stress hormones ultimately start to wear on our bodies, and then they are helpful and not helpful. In short bursts, stress hormones are great. They can really make the body move very quickly and do all kinds of things that we wouldn't do in a calm state. Okay. Usually like strength and prowess, things like that. Um, but again, if we're looking at days or weeks, for example, of not having power, sometimes longer, if you start looking at some of the responses in, say, Puerto Rico, that's a long time to be stressed, right? And so we want to make sure that we are instilling these stress breaks every day. Maybe we might do something special on the weekends, maybe something even bigger on the monthly, and really try to have it like intervals, okay? But in a pinch, these are usually the ones that I'm using for myself to try to ground myself, down regulate, and bring my higher thinking brain online. Because if we're in our animal brain or our lizard brain, that's really short term thinking usually. It's very hard to do big picture abstract thinking from if we're in our lizard brain, because those are wizard brain functions. And so you really, even if it seems annoying or slow or clunky, the issue is that your body is going to need a break. Whether you agree with that fact or not, like it will make itself known. And so even if that's just resting instead of sleeping, right? I look at my cat. My cat is uh going from middle age to elderly. And man, he is just finding it so peaceful to find a dark little cardboard box to crawl into. And he might just be dozing. Okay, I see a hand. Dr. Miku.
It's me. Actually, it's a meta question. Do you want us to ask
Yeah.
questions in the chat throughout, or should we probably save them to the end so that you have time to get through things?
Probably as we go along is good. I'm trying to check the chat as we go. Um and
Okay.
so yeah.
Question.
Up,
So the high res, low res, you're referring to
yeah.
resolution for how much the brain can bring in
Yeah.
data. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or like even like a picture. Yeah, where we've got like some of these older cameras, they're kind of blurry and low res, and
Yeah.
it takes a minute to upload. But then you've got like what, 1 billion pixels now, and
Mhm.
that's wizard brain. Yeah, good question.
And my other question is, from like I don't know if you're gonna go in, I know you actually have some implementation things, but do you have like, so just to like help us visualize this, if there was a situation, especially in a longer term situation for you with your family, so say you're head of family for this sort of care thing, be like, okay,
Yeah.
family, we're gonna do a thing once a day or twice a day. It's gonna be really important. Like, how would you, I know it sounds silly, but like, yeah, how would you
No,
even
it doesn't.
begin to bring that up to a family? Or if you were a community leader, like, can you talk us through, like, just, I don't know, a little, like, help us visualize? Because I hope that everyone on this call can walk away doing some of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good important point. And a big part of disaster mental health is looking at the fact that a disaster is a force magnifier. And so what I mean by that in a disaster mental health and family context is that if you have healthy practices in play now, then that will be magnified under a disaster scenario. So I get started now. I have family meetings now. That is just something how we roll now. So when a disaster hits, now it's scalability. I might have more family meetings. I might have less. And so in regards to hopefully one of the takeaways from today is going to be like, how can I start talking to my family about this stuff now? Like, so for example, if I have a kid who has earbuds, he likes earbuds, he hates headphones, and I don't find a way to tuck in some extra earbuds, for example, instead of the disaster kit, because my kid loses stuff all the time. And so that's something I'm going to be thinking about. And then that's an ongoing discussion. We tend to do our disaster supplies yearly during the holidays because we usually have a lot of downtime. And so those are times where I'm updating my Ohana plan. Those are times where I'm going through my supplies. Those are times like I'm annoying, but my family at least knows that I'm annoying. They're used to it. And at the end of the day, they're going to be fairly tolerant, but that's because we've done the work ahead of time. One of the things, one of the rituals that we do that I think is a big part of what I do during disaster mental health is like a disaster scenario is something called a family adventure, right? Those are some of the rituals that we do every week, right? Together. And we start them young, although, even at 18, they're used to it now, but it did take periods of, we're just going to do this. Let's see. Let's just try it for the month and let's see if we like it or not, right? So sometimes presenting it as a temporary compromise can help bring a buy-in because a lot of people think that something might be really dumb, right? My kids thought that family adventure was dumb. They just wanted to stay and play on their phones. Why would and they grew up with these things. I have a half a childhood analog and a half of a childhood digital. I think I'm pretty tech savvy. I like video games. I like online stuff, and I'm still like, man, you guys are on your phone a lot, right? Part of that is developmentally appropriate, but also part of that is like this. It was a fight to get them to leave their phones for sure. But over time, then they got to see the value in it. And I also presented it like, hey, it's going to be family meeting or family adventure this weekend. What do you want to do? And then I try my best to honor what they want to do first. Because then I'm actually getting less. If I show up, I'm like, okay, we're doing family adventure and I want to go to the beach. So that's what we're going to do first. They might want to go to the beach, but they might not want to go to the beach. But if we can start with like, oh, hey, we want to try this thing and we want to try it every week. And so I thought you could pick first. And I try my best to honor it. I can't always honor it. My kids for a while they wanted to go to the water park every weekend. Well, I'm not that rich. Like, like we can maybe squeeze it in every now and then, but I don't know that I can do it every weekend. And so that's something that we've kind of got to decide as a family. So it is something to be thinking about how to introduce it. Did that answer the question, Dr. Miku?
Actually, yeah, it was really helpful. I'm kind of listening with two hats on. One, a lot of us are starting our resilience hubs. They're starting to have round tables, right?
Yeah.
And we meet with our hubs. And I sort of think about our hub as an ohana in a way.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I'm thinking about that. Like, how do we build in, you're right, like, how do we build in those kind of rituals even into our everyday meetings? Like, because I actually do mindfulness things, because then in a disaster, your mindfulness things can then transition into these other techniques. But then the other hat is thinking about it with children and families. So then how would we advise community members to support? So yeah, it was super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see the question in the chat about yelling. I don't know that I think we can get rid of yelling, and I don't know that I'm someone who thinks that that's an expectation we should have on ourselves, especially during disaster. what we find when we look at the studies of couples who can get really, really nasty with one another, the healthiest and happiest couples are not putting their efforts into not fighting. In fact, there's an argument to be made that you cannot prevent fighting, you cannot prevent conflict, especially between couples. All you can do is manage it. So a big part of the work that I'm doing with families, not just couples, is, well, how do you make a repair? Because we're all going to drop the ball. We're all going to lose it from time to time. That doesn't mean that we need to slink off in shame for the next 3 months, although maybe, for a little bit. Yes, if we think that our yelling is outside of normal range, that might be something that we want to work on again before disaster hits. So it might be, just looking some articles up online on ways to work with it. But if and when I'm going to be yelling, I know that. And I'm going to be very clear about like what part of, especially if a disaster hits, like I already know that I'm working with my family, like, hey, things are really big right now. And I have to make a lot of movements very quickly. So please, please, please do not take me personally while I'm just trying to get oriented. Right. So these kinds of things, looking at, first of all, how can I let them know that it's not their fault that I'm yelling if I'm yelling? And hey, once I get this task done, you and me, we're just gonna sit and have any of you played Tetris XL? I actually love Tetris XL. I bought it at Costco. They usually sell it during the summertime, and it's big wobbly Tetris. And so I might say something like, "Let me just get these things situated, and then let's me and you play Tetris XL or whatever you want to do, even if we're just sitting and being mindful or doing forced bathing," which is so cool, Dr. Miku. So again, I'm also looking at, if I drop the ball, it might be something like, okay, that came out harsher than I meant for. Let me have a do-over. A repair is not necessarily an apology, although you might want to give an apology, right? Like, yeah. So the healthiest and happiest couples are nipping it in the bud as quickly as they can, right? They're not just, and they're also trying to coach themselves. If they're the target of irritability, then it's going to be this notion of then, okay, hey, my partner is super stressed and I want to try to give them as much grace as I can. So hopefully it's coming from a work from both partners, as they both like, wow, our whole lives are upside down now. Yeah, of course we're going to yell. But yeah, good question. Those who freeze response or go mute. Um, for that one, I would probably be doing more body work. So for some of these things here, it's a nice little segue here. So movement, stretch, or take a walk together, right? If it was a child who went mute or wasn't talking, or had a freeze response, I probably wouldn't push. Yeah. Um, that one is that like part of it is just might be shock. Yeah. And so if that's the case, I might do things like maybe give my child like not a full body massage, but maybe like a little hand massage or a hug, or when the timing is right and we're out of danger, and really help co-regulate and ground them through my body, right? If it's me who is muted and like freezing, I will probably dip into my senses. Yeah. Um, so thinking about like your senses, they'll talk about like the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and something you can taste. So that's something that you might want to bring back into focus, because what can happen is that we go a million years into the future and we're really trying to bring ways to be present and not dissociate. Yeah, Dr. Miku.
Okay, this is a sort of a application question, and there's also some other good questions in the chat. I did a disaster mental health, like first aid. I did another training, and you learn about these techniques, but then actually doing them is kind of a whole other theme. They
Yeah.
suggested like another tip was to do I don't know how to explain it. Rhythm, things that are rhythmical, like either weaving or play or like, I don't know how to explain it. They were saying like uh something where you're like sorting tools and you hear the sound of the tool being sorted. If you like do that next to somebody, you don't have to talk to them, but you just like sort your tools sort of loudly, not super loud. Like I guess I don't know, have you ever heard of something like that? And have you ever
Yeah,
tried
rhythmic
it? And it
stuff.
have yeah.
Oh yeah. Super helpful. Part of how I work with rhythmic especially like during periods of stress is I have like a whole stress playlist. So I'm very deliberate in using music rhythm. Also you can use tapping rhythm on your own body. So yeah, those are other ways to work with it, especially if you're musical. And neurodivergence, if there's neurodivergence going on, again, working with like your support person to really find what works for you. If you're sensitive to sounds, then focusing on sounds is probably not going to be helpful to you. You might want to make your own plan. And I have stuff at the end to help people focus on their own plan. But really getting clear and communicating to the people who are going to be around you of things that can really make it worse. Yeah. And so that might be something also if it's small children with neurodivergence, do they have a like point person who can help support them? And that might be something to designate ahead of time. Like, okay, hun, during periods of stress, my neurodivergent daughter needs to be near me. She's not going to have a good response with you. We already know, for example, that my husband is probably going to make it worse for my daughter. So he'll be tasked to go do other things while I'll be the point person. We'll probably have to switch off, especially if it's like I'm trying to keep myself together and now, my daughter is like banging her head or something, right? Like we're probably going to have to do our best to coordinate that. But working with support people ahead of time to really get clear about how to intervene when it's crunch time is a really good way to work with that. Everyone talks about deep breathing. The one that I really like for regulating is 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. There seems to be something really important about making your exhalation twice as long as your inhalation. So if you're going too fast, that's fine. You'll balance it out. If you're trying this for the first time, you'll want to be seated. Some people can get dizzy and fall over. So try it seated for 4 rounds, go back to normal breathing. And then if you still find, because a big part of getting that higher thinking brain, that wizard brain back online is going to be this notion of slowing your heart rate. That will be a very difficult task to do if you're still in danger. So if you're still in danger, you need to move as much as you can. And then these things can help bring you down once you have, even if it's just temporary safety. Yeah. Um, for children, the bilateral drawing or even drawing, part of the work that we're doing in the Pacific, really looking at some the places where we're losing land. You might find yourself in some rugged terrain kind of things. And so even if you just have a stick, you don't even have to have paper and colored pencils or whatever. Even if you're just using a stick to draw in the sand, bilateral drawing, it has a couple techniques. The one I like to do is mirroring. It doesn't matter. You can pick just a scene you want to draw. Maybe it's the sun and some mountains and some birds or whatever. And at the same time, your hands are drawing the same thing, trying to get both brains hemispheres to be coordinating and integrating. Part of the work that can happen and cause problems down the road, and I'm not trained in like trauma therapy like EMDR, CPT, those kinds of things. But what you'll find, especially with EMDR, is that they're using eye movement to help integrate memories, especially trauma memories that are not stored the same in the brain. And so this notion of bilateral drawing can really help the brain talk to itself. What you'll see happen is that people will compartmentalize, right? And so now their brain is like, well, you've got like disaster mode, and then you've got mom mode, and Some people will work really hard to keep them separate and fractured, and that can get us through in a pinch, but long term, ultimately, the brain likes to integrate these things. I'm kind of going a little too advanced for today's talk, but just know that when we do things like bilateral drawing and we're working both sides of the body together, that can really help us manage trauma down the road. Yeah. Um, Serial sevens. Okay, serial sevens. This one, especially if you have someone who's super distraught, is the notion of picking a number. I don't know, 1,342, counting back by seven. Okay, 1,300 and what is that? 35, 36, something like this, right? That one's a little bit challenging for me. I might have to break it down. I'm not a math person, so I might have to break it down by threes if seven is too challenging. But it's really trying to force your wizard brain online. That is a technique that you can kind of, okay, hey, I just witnessed a tsunami wash all of my loved ones away. I am sitting in shock. Once I have that realization, and it might take some time, then I'm like, okay, I got to try to push through this for now. And so I'll be like, okay, 1,342. Okay, minus 1,335. It's not about getting it right. It is about trying to think it through to decrease the emotional piece to it and focus more on the logical piece to it. You want it to be challenging, but not impossible. Okay. So be thinking about some of those things and thinking about what ones might be helpful, especially when you're working with children or vulnerable people. Yeah. Okay. So what to do in a crisis? We have our immediate steps. We want to try our grounding techniques. We want to reach out to a trusted friend or a support person. Ensure safety, remove immediate dangers, and if we cannot, then we remove ourselves. Most of us know the key resources for Hawaii: 988 for crisis line, 911 for an imminent safety or criminal concern, and go to the nearest emergency room for assistance. This one is really important. The disaster distress helpline, I find, also supports the Marshall Islands too. So if there are things that are happening, we have the disaster specific distress helpline through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration to talk through disaster counselors to help. And then readyhawaii.gov has more disaster preparedness information. And then I did want to make sure people may want to screenshot this. I won't go into it too much today, but here are some resources for the Marshall Islands and some tips for what to do for that as we work on trying to support some of those. A key component, especially for the Marshall Islands, right? Reach out to your church leaders, elders, and community supports. That one we want to make sure that, I think in the US, we're very quick to be like, just go to a therapist. And not every place might be comfortable with that or have that kind of infrastructure. So we just want to be mindful of that. Some tips. This is hard sometimes in disasters. So be present, listen without judgment, avoid minimizing. It could have been worse. And offer practical help, share resources, or assist directly. For our family, we try to get really clear on the outset. Hey, I'm having a hard time and I really just need to vent. My husband loves to just go into problem solving. That's what I need right now. I can solve my problems. I just need some empathy or some comfort, or just maybe I've been running around taking care of so many other people that day. And so I just need my own place to fall apart. That's what I need. My husband might not know that though. He might be overwhelmed and stressed and he's not thinking. So he's like, yeah, just sleep it off. He wouldn't say that. I would say that. And then he'd be like, hey, I need some comfort. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, that part. And that can feel like an extra burden. So part of it might need to be like, hey, I'm feeling really raw right now and I want to support you, but I just do not have the bandwidth. I need to take a nap. And can we talk as soon as I'll take a 30-minute nap and then let's check in? We everything is going to get compounded. And so that's why, again, thinking about predictability and doing what we can to make things a little more certain is going to be like, okay, we already know no matter what is going to happen once a disaster hits, all right, it is 3:45. I know that we're going to have our next family meeting at 6 p.m. What can I do to kind of steady myself as I have to sit tight? Mom is off helping run the shelters or whatever, right? And so we're talking about those things. I've heard them called analog kits. So like there's this movement to bring back like little bags of things that you can do when you don't have power. Maybe it's knitting or drawing or just reading some books, yeah. Um, but what we don't want, and it takes this a certain degree of self-awareness that even I sometimes slip up on still. Um, Sometimes I'm overwhelmed and I haven't yet admitted it to myself until I start interacting with my family. And then I'm kind of like snappier than I mean to be. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm trying to be helpful, but because I haven't had a chance to take care of myself, it's actually harmful. And so having those discussions with my partner, with my family, like, hey, here's what I've noticed when I'm stressed. If I'm doing this stuff, I need you to let me know if I need to go take a nap. Hopefully I've got the kind of relationship with my family where I'm not going to get defensive, like, hey, you seem a little bit snappier than usual. We've talked about this before. You said one of the things that can help is to go lay down for a half an hour or whatever, or take some time to go play with your analog kit. Don't want to say that in a way that is super snarky or weaponized. You really need to take a nap. That's judgmental. And look at the first bullet point. I'm having a hard time. The last thing that's going to help me is judgment, right? And that is going to cause a relational rupture if I sense that, like, well, you really need to take a break. That's condescending. And we can get into it, but there's a lot of research that shows that condescending, sarcasm, mockery, open disrespect, those kinds of ways of communicating damage the relationship. And the relationship is already going to be wobbly in a disaster scenario. So I just want to highlight that point. Okay, I'll probably go for about 7 more minutes. We'll see what we can do.
Man, really quick. That one gets me all the time. I can identify when it happens, but I'm still really bad at trying to figure out how to offer in a supportive sounding way. Do you have a couple different phrases for us that like work really well? That's the one that I struggle with the most is like, I know this person needs food, water, rest, whatever it is. Like I know it, but it never works when I try to offer it.
And maybe that's part of it, depending on who you're talking to. Part of it might just need to ask them directly, like, hey, what do you need right now? How can I help? Right. But again, tone carries that conversation. If you could say, well, what do you need right now? How can I support you? It's the same message. That tone will sink your efforts. And now you've got your messenger is ruining your message. Right. So in regards to like, it might just be like, hey, you've done a lot in the last hour. How about you go take a break? I got this for the next hour. Right. Maybe it needs to be that directive. Right. Maybe it needs to be softer depending on who you're working with. Like, hey, you got this? Do you need a break? Is there anything that I can take off your plate? Right. It doesn't have to be ashamed. We're not invoking shame like you're failing because you need to rest. That's not what we want to do in a disaster scenario. And a big part of Red Cross work is that the mental health responders are also looking at their volunteers. They're also making sure. So with Red Cross, that's a great model. Like the mental health responders will talk to who either the volunteers or the supervisor and be like, hey, this person really needs a break. And then the supervisor will step in and be like, hey, you're off the clock. You could come back at, 1800 or whatever, right? So that might be part of it. Sometimes we have to be sneaky, especially if it's a child, right? Maybe my kid has had it with me for the day. And so what I do, hey, hon, I need you to be the contact on this one. I'm making everything worse. And my husband will step in and be like, hey, I wanted to show you this cool thing. And then maybe that can be the point person, depending on who you have available. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind too is that it's not unusual for people to be like, I don't know what I need. But that's going to be a cue to you that they need time, and say, okay, you know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. There's a lot to process right now. Can I check back in with you in an hour? Even if it's just to get you some water. And people, if you don't know them, they're happy to be like yes or no. And at that point, you just listen. They're telling you. If it's your family, hopefully you'll be able to have more frank conversations. But that again, that if you're finding these conversations, if you're hearing me today and you're like, I have no idea how to even broach that with my husband or with my kiddo, then that might be a impetus to go find someone to help you have hard talks, because those hard talks are coming in a disaster or not, but they will be magnified in a disaster scenario. And they find that approach, how we bring something up within the first 3 minutes, will make or break that conversation. So really trying to control your variables of how you talk. Like my son, when I'm stressed and I go into therapist mode, my son picks up on it in an instant. And he'll be like, why are you talking to me like I'm a client? I have to watch it with him. And sometimes I just have to be like, hey, hon, I'm just stressed and strained, and I'm just trying to contain it. Yeah. Again, that communication builds connection, right? Okay. I want to be mindful of the time here. So I'm going to stop. There's so much more to this. I'm just kind of moseying around. So let me open it up just more freely to whatever questions come up.
Do we have, okay, so if people have questions, you can post them in the chat. You guys can unmute. I want you to share the examples of the little kits though. Do we have any?
Oh, the kits? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Let
I
me
think
bring
those
that
are
up.
super useful. They're simple and easy, and people could get
Yeah.
funded to make them too, or that could be like a student project to make them. So yeah.
Okay. Let me see here. All right. So we're going to talk about it very briefly. I want to honor everyone's time. Um, in regards to um, the plan and the kits, which I love the kits too. Okay, hold on. Sorry, I'm just trying to find all my buttons here. All right, where did it go? I just brought it up in the other one. Okay, whatever. Okay, okay. There we go. So 2 parts: stress care plan, calming activities, journaling, beach walks, whatever. Support people, family, friends, therapists, emergency steps. These are all aspects to our stress care plan. And then our mental health first aid kit or analog bag or whatever. Comfort items, tea, lay, photos, sensory tools, again, because part of like grief work is very much body based. And you might find yourself dissociating, coming in and out. Um, so here's an example of a stress care plan, just the categories, and then I'll get into it. So I have, and it doesn't have to be this many. It might be just a couple under each category or just some of them. I'm a planner. So I have like dimensions of stress care that I'll default to. But number one, healthy coping skills, things that I can do on my own to try to ground myself and cope. Number two, social support, who are the people that I can contact. And here I'll also likely put phone numbers in case I lose my cell phone or something. Things to avoid. They might be people. I know that one neighbor will really grate on me in a disaster scenario, and I need to avoid that person. Maybe it's the news. Maybe I can't avoid it entirely, but I have to like schedule when I dip into the news. Alcohol might be something I need to avoid because guess what? When we're in a disaster scenario, rates of substance use, interpersonal violence, child abuse, neglect, those rates shoot up, right? And so we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves to be healthy for not only to endure what that disaster is bringing in the immediate future, but also the damage it might bring to our relationships if we are not thinking about it. Things to limit, again, maybe there are things that we can't avoid, but we just need to limit exposure to. Things to indulge. Maybe this is the time because, especially once we lose power, we'll tell you this, we tend to have loads of time on our hands once our phones are dead. And we've got to be thinking about maybe this is the time I want to indulge my piano playing or Maybe this is the time I want to indulge, you know, photography. Um, you're going to have lots of times on your hands. So thinking about the things that are positive that you really need to anchor into, um, places to go that may or may not be available to you if you have to shelter in place, things to eat or drink, comfort food, comfort items. I keep some dark chocolate, blocks of dark chocolate on hand because that's actually another great grounding tool. Mm. And again, I've told you I love my sensory-based activities here. So things that really engage my senses, not just cognitive ruminating. Things to look forward to. And those are things that I'm gonna, okay, maybe we're gonna have a dinner as a community tonight. Maybe we know that we've got, our anniversary is coming up in the week. It might be short term. It could be like, well, hey, I know in 6 months we are planning a trip to Thailand or whatever, right? And we want to make sure that we are actively looking for the things to look forward to because in disaster scenarios it hope you've got to fight for it. That's just practical, not foolish hope, not naive hope, nothing like that, but there's still things worth looking forward to. And then notes, any other notes if you have like special things that can trigger you, those are things to keep in mind. So I have a notes section, so
Okay.
here's
I think we got to do only 1 minute on the kits, and then we probably got to wrap it because I think
okay.
we're just about.
Yeah. So for the kits, based on the plan, this is the size of an Altoids tin that I have refurbished. And then there are some things that I have to look forward to. I have some tea, I have some toys, I have this little crystal thing that I like to fidget with. I have lavender oil, some cough drops, pictures of my family, and I can throw it in a purse and I can just take it and be with it on. I also glue pictures in the Altoids tins when you open it up too, when you pull everything out. So those are definitely things. It doesn't have to be some big crazy kit. It can be very small and it can still make all the difference. So yeah, there's a whole lot to it.
That's so
But you can
beautiful.
also make it as big or as small as you want. Again, it's about scalability and what's useful on an individual level.
Nana, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I know we had to sort of wrap it at the end here. We did get a question from On, so I think we have like maybe one more minute. We'll also send the follow-up resources, and I think it might be fun to do a workshop where we actually make those kits or something like that. I feel like people could do that with their groups too, but yes, we will share the recording as well. Okay, so we've got On's question in the chat, and then if anyone else wants to leave questions in the chat, we can also make sure that we follow up with you and make sure that they're answered. So On, do you want to just unmute and say your question? How do we balance between socializing and helping when the people we interact with have various personalities?
I mean, I'm pretty direct. So I mean, so that's a big part of being a couples therapist is one, we're not a mind reader. I have been married for over 21 years now. I talk about this all day long. I'm still not a mind reader. And so part of it is the dynamic that we have. We'll have an ouch and we'll have an oops. Sometimes I am very exuberant and I bump into my husband's whatever. I rely on him to do his best to politely let me know if I've just committed an ouch, because chances are it's just an oops from my perspective. And so really building that kind of dialogue. Oh, hey, it might just be putting it into words. Sometimes these kinds of incidents can cause a variety of reactions, and so I just want to ask you, um, are you looking for advice or are you just looking for some comfort or reassurance, or is there anything specifically? I mean, I'm pretty direct, so I just you know I let them tell me, um but I'm responsive. Yeah. Oh, okay, off I go, right? Yeah.
I think what I'm gonna do, I think I'll do is I'll just kind of stop the recording here, and then Riley just posted something really helpful and beautiful in the chat. Just thank you so much, Riley. I don't know if you wanted to unmute to speak to that here. I'm just gonna stop the recording and do a little soft